Thank you, Sarah. You are someone who actually can really identify with the kind of debt and the kind of problems you can find yourself in with an unexpected
Yeah.
cancer diagnosis, aren't you? Sadly.
Yes. Well, I didn't fall into debt, but I was obviously unable to work while I was doing chemotherapy, and then I've needed a number of surgeries since my original cancer diagnosis. And as a result of that, the time it takes to recover from surgeries, you spend a lot of time out of work. So I've been claiming universal credit on and off, and it's been a complete nightmare, if I'm completely honest.
Well, the government seem to be accused of making it as difficult as possible for those people that
Yes.
need the help the
Mhm.
most. So, could you sort of talk us through then what would have happened to you if this had happened now during this pandemic? What else do you think you would be contending with now?
I actually don't even like to think about it because when I found out I had cancer, I had stage 3C colon cancer, which I'm in remission from now. So I'm still at risk, but I'm not in immediate danger. But when I was in immediate danger, if there was already there are before the COVID pandemic, there were already huge delays in the NHS simply because they're so understaffed and under resourced. So I think I had to wait a month from diagnosis to having that tumour taken out of me. And that felt like a really long time because if you think about it, that thing is actively trying to kill you while it's in there, and it's like dropping off tiny bits of its cells around your body. So I had chemotherapy because to sort of clear up any sort of loose cancer cells that had got out. If I'd had to wait any longer than a month, I think I would have gone mad. And I think at this point, people are waiting. People might have been waiting 3, 4 more months, or people's diagnoses are being held up because they can't access frontline services in the form of their GPs or 111, etc.
And I guess as well, because how, if you don't mind me asking, how were you diagnosed? What was going on with you that made you think that you needed to see someone?
I had blood in my poo. I had like lots of instances of seeing blood in my poo that sort of became more frequent. And so I actually didn't go via my GP. I rang 111, and just because I thought there's something really wrong here. It was like something like just an alarm started going off in my head. So I just for some reason rang 111 rather than my GP. And but I think because I accessed the services that way, it it was a very sort of slow, complicated, convoluted way to get to diagnosis because until you actually have a cancer diagnosis in front of you, you get passed from department to department, and you're not treated sort of urgently until they know you've got cancer. So there was a long sort of journey to diagnosis. But once I was diagnosed, I was sort of almost straight in, as I say.
So how long do you think it took you from sort of noticing something was wrong to getting your full, rather shocking and I'm sure completely frightening diagnosis?
I think it must have been about 6 months, maybe a little bit.
So if that is the sort of normal turnaround of what is happening in a non-pandemic, because 6 months in terms of cancer is not a short amount of time. I mean, that's the time in which people get diagnosed and sadly die. And so, if that's happening in 6 months, then I imagine now it would be far worse. I mean, we saw last week, didn't we, the statistics saying that 1 million women have not been having screenings. I mean, how does it make you feel with what you've been through, Sarah, knowing that at the moment there are women like you out there who won't have had it diagnosed yet?
I think it's terrifying. I think it's mortifying. I'm always speechless trying to express how much that thought panics and worries me because I already sort of had a clue that this was going on because in social media and in the online world we have communities of people that are going through or have been through cancer treatment. So I've met a lot of people who have been going through cancer treatment at the same time as me. And we've been hearing stories from the chemo wards and from treatment centres where nurses and frontline staff are just worried because they aren't seeing as many people as they would normally, sort of taking up treatment. And so,
well, there might be someone in a situation like your own who might think, and this is happening, that might think, well, actually, it's not so bad. The doctors are so busy at the moment that I won't bother them with what I've noticed. And in actual fact, those sorts of decisions are life and death decisions, aren't they? It was for you.
Absolutely. Especially when symptoms like mine, they're quite embarrassing, and you don't, people are like you say, cautious to come forward.
Well, people are going to look, especially with your kind of cancer, they're going to look for any excuse not to go to the doctors. They're going to roll their eyes and say, oh, well, they'll have COVID to deal with. And it's probably, you're right, the more embarrassing, or the kinds of cancers that we don't really like to talk about, that are probably going to be the ones that suffer the most. So then, where do you stand then, Sarah, as someone who's seen what's happening during the good times? At the moment, we're in a real dilemma, aren't we, about, do we start to try and lock down again and start focusing on COVID, or do we perhaps take measures that aren't as strict? I mean, how has your experience informed what you think the government should be doing next?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, it comes back down to they need to take much better care of the NHS. I mean, it's always been that way. The reason my original diagnosis was delayed was because they didn't take good enough care of it. Other people's diagnoses will be delayed further because of the state it's in, that it's been left in. And they'll be delayed further still because of COVID. So, that's my take on the matter.
And final question, how are you now? And are you okay? Your prognosis?
I mean, I haven't had a scan recently, probably because of the whole COVID thing. I mean, my last scans were fine, so I'm in remission, which means that I have no current signs of cancer. I won't be all clear for another 3.5 years. So I mean, I'm feeling positive and looking positive, but I have deep concerns for the cancer community as a whole as a result of what's been going on.
I hear you, and as do Macmillan, and I should give a word, by the way, to Macmillan's new campaign, Everyone from Day One. It's the new charity partner for next year's London Marathon, and it's basically about trying to remind everyone that cancer shouldn't become, in Macmillan's words, the forgotten sea, which is, of course, the big worry that we're discussing. Sarah Mills, really good to talk to you. Really admire your story and the fact that you've got through it, and we're really happy that things are looking good for you at the moment. Thanks once again as well to Eve Byrne from Macmillan. Over to you now. What about you? What about your how you would be affected by further restrictions?